Hello, fellow painters. We are going to explore today the vineyard of Penedès in Barcelona, Spain. And what we're looking at right now is actually the view that I am going to be painting. We're not there yet, but I'll be painting from a photograph. However, this painting only took me about an hour, which is probably about the time that we should be um, taking to do our plein air paintings while we're there. If you want to work on them a little longer, if let's say we have an overcast day, then yeah, but when the sun shifts around, and I think I probably spoke about this in my other videos, that really you have about an hour between um, the time that you start to the time that you finish. And you're not really working all that big when you're there. You want to try to keep everything, maybe 9 by 12 is a really good size for plein air painting. Anything bigger than that, you will have to go into overtime and try to paint either that day. Unfortunately, we only have one day at a time and a place to paint. So we don't have the leisure of coming back to the same area. So here we go. This is a very, very small picture. Is about probably, I would say, about 5 by 7-ish. The reason why I'm doing the small is because of expediency. Now, I could have done something 9 by 12 and done it a little larger, but I felt that this was probably good just to show, um, basic concept of what you want to try to get down within the hour. All right. So what I'm doing now is I'm working on a MDF panel that's been oil ground, gessoed. So there's an oil ground. You can almost see the texture in there, and this was probably a little bit too much texture for a small painting like that, but it's okay. It's really just a study and a demonstration. I could have painted on gessoed cardboard for that matter, but here, what I like about this working on oil ground is because it's not absorbent, which means it doesn't it's not absorbent. It doesn't sink in, and the colors and everything just sits on the top layer. So it's almost like painting on an already painted canvas, but it just happens to be white. All right. So right now I'm just getting a general layout of what I want to paint. So here we go. So this is all dry and ready to go. So wherever I paint, whenever I paint, even if I'm painting in a studio, I will start with the sky and work my way from back to front. It just seems to be the proper, I don't want to say proper, but it's like it's a good procedure because once you have the sky in place, the sky kind of dictates how dark or how light the rest of the painting is going to go. So as you can see now, we're seeing a little bit of cerulean blue. This is ultramarine blue in there. They're very. I just kept the colors very light. There's a lot of I'm using titanium white. Um, and now I'm looking for the color of the mountains in the distance. Now, mind you, I'm working from a photograph that I found online, which is actually in, I think, some of the reference materials we got from Beatrice. So this is actually one of the pictures. It probably is just a little more has a little bit more high resolution, but it's basically the same scene. So basically, these are mountains way in the distance. Now, what are these colors? Well, these colors are basically the same colors as the sky, which are cerulean blue, ultramarine blue, and I think there is and titanium white, and there's probably just a touch of green, and that green would probably be sap green. When I paint outdoors, this actually, what I'm painting right now is sap green and white and a little yellow ochre. The greens I try to stick with outdoors are usually more warm and are more natural. Okay, probably stay away from Viridian greens outdoors. We don't really need them unless we're painting a lot of water, which we're not in this picture. So you see, so what I'm trying to do now is I'm trying to work my way from the mountain ridge, and working my way forward. And as we can see, we're getting more chromatic. Like that green is a little bit more intense than it would be if it was a darker day. You're seeing now I'm adding a little shadow to the greens. I'm trying to give them a little bit more dimension, and working my way out from there. Uh, well, so the reason why I blocked in the green is because the green is mass, right? So what you want to do is you want to try to go for the bigger masses first and then break them down. So right there, what I did was, as you can see, I put a color down, wasn't crazy about it, and now I'm painting it in again. Now, this color is that it's a mass. Basically, it's burnt sienna, yellow ochre, probably does have a little bit of sap green in it, and of course white. And the darker green part that I worked on here is basically ultramarine blue, which we used in the sky, sap green, and probably a little burnt umber. All right, so that's how I try to achieve my darker greens. Okay, so now this is it looks like I think I moved this into another studio, but you can see now that uh, the greens are established, the background is established. There is actually a little bit of green here and there in the mountain, and I think I just added just a little sap green and ultramarine blue. Uh, this area in here now um, looks to me like it probably has a little coolness to it. It's actually kind of like a shadowy green. Um, so what we're trying to do is we're still trying to keep the background lighter. So the lighter green uh, mountains in the distance, you can see they're not that all that dark, right? We have to remember there's a lot of atmosphere. There's moisture in the air. No matter, well, it could be on a day like this. Chances are when we go there to paint, it's probably going to be some humidity, right? So that humidity causes the distance clouds and trees to get a little cooler, right? So keep that in mind. You want to have a sense of distance in your painting, right? So you want to keep those mountains lighter, a little more chromatic too. Maybe not as chromatic as what we're going to paint in the foreground, but you want to give it that sense of depth. If you painted the mountains the way you think they are, well, they're dark, there's trees and everything else. What's gonna happen there is you're gonna just have very, very dark backgrounds, and you can't really go any darker in the foreground. So then you get locked in. So think of that as a process. When you start, you have to remember, I can't get any darker in my foreground than what's already there. So if you make your background too too dark, you're going to make everything else too dark going forward to the foreground. Okay, so keep that in mind as you're painting outdoors. So this is basically um, kind of like a little, uh, this video in essence is kind of like it gives you a little bit of idea of how to go about your painting when you're outside. It's like a refresher course for those who've painted outdoors before. Okay. Um, so as we're painting, we're looking at masses. This is actually a lot of the darker greens are probably sap green, burnt umber, and ultramarine blue. That's usually a good color combination to darken, some of the deeper greens that you'll see. I mean, as long as you have the sun out, you're going to have shadows, and those shadows are not going to be that light, especially where we're painting at the moment. This is kind of mid-ground, so we want to have a little bit darker. So those colors are ultramarine blue, burnt umber, and probably a little. There's definitely white in there. There's a little white, um, just to keep them from getting too dark. Like I don't want to have anything that's very dark. I want to save those dark values for the foreground. Probably when we start painting in the wine groves, you'll see that those shadows get pretty dark. Now I already masked in all the grass, and the grass is pretty much just cadmium yellow, a little yellow ochre, and sap green. And now the vines themselves. Now some of these are vines, some of these are posts. That's ultramarine blue, burnt umber, and very saturated. So that's pretty much straight out of the tube. There's very little white in that mixture. But you can see, because we're working wet into wet, we have to go a little darker because, well, we just want to make sure we get the contrast that we see in the foreground. What I'd suggest to do is, when we're outside, is consider using your liquid, maybe using a little bit of even the thinners will help the paint. Let's say the green that we put down, it will help that dry a little faster. So consider that as you're painting. So if you're watching this, like before we go, refer to it when you're in your hotel room, because you'll be able to, check this out and say, okay, well, maybe I should go back and do like a little quick cramming session and just see. And sometimes it will help you, because when you're out there, if you haven't done a lot of plein air painting, we're kind of like, we're like deer in the headlights. It becomes too overwhelming. But when you keep everything masked out like we did in this little video, you'll see that it's, you break things down from their largest forms to the smallest.
So
Right
as you can
now,
see, we're
I'm basically
adding a
painting
little bit
some,
more
grape leaves or
definition
grape
to the trees in the back.
clusters that might be
So
on the
this is an
tops of
opportunity
those
now,
posts
once you have
there.
everything masked in
I'm not
the
getting too
painting,
detailed. I'm just
you can
painting
start to move
masses,
around.
even if they do
Now,
look
this painting
spotty, they're
definitely took me
still
well
smaller
because of the
masses, right?
size. I mean, it's
So we
only
can
like
see
5 by
that we
7.
have the
So it only took me
posts,
basically
we have
way
the
under an hour.
vines that are
But
growing up,
and I know that
and
the video
we're
is
just
sped up
painting
in
in some
areas,
of those
which it
shapes that we
is.
see in the
It's
photo.
still like
So
considerably
there we
short.
go. Now
But
you'll see that
having
little
said
area
that,
in the middle of the painting
you
that
will be
hasn't been
painting
painting. Well, that's what I'm
probably
trying to
bigger
keep
using bigger
this little
brushes.
painting from
You'll
shifting
be
around too
responding
much.
a lot
All right,
quicker
so
to your situation
as you
there.
can see, there's
So
just little
here, as
bits
far
of
as the detail is
detail
concerned, and I
over
did want to stress
the
this
combination that
too,
I
is
mentioned
just
earlier,
before you
which is
start actually
sap green,
painting
cadmium
your picture. So let's
yellow,
say you,
a little titanium
from what
white,
we
obviously,
viewed in the
and yellow,
first like
probably a yellow
minute
ochre
of
in
this
there too.
painting, where it was
So we
just
just
basically the
wanted
line
a
drawing.
color
That is the
of
opportunity to take
to
to
just show through
photograph
here.
your
So there we go.
your still I'm sorry, your landscape, okay, because you want to make sure that you have the exact same image that you're responding to in the beginning, which means you want to get those clouds that you see at that minute, which they will change. They are going to change. They're not going to sit still for you. They're going to transverse through the sky very quickly. So if you want to keep some of those, or as you're painting, right, if you, let's say you see a cloud formation that you think is better, take pictures of that. Or if you see anything else that happens in the picture, so let's say there are people walking in the vineyard, maybe you want to take a couple of shots of them. So we can utilize our technology with our cell phones to take pictures as we're painting, just to add a little bit more detail. And here it is. This is the final painting. As you can see, there's a lot of brush strokes in here. Not a lot of broken colors, but it's basically, a mass in, which is pretty much all you really can do when you're outside. Can you add a little bit more detail? Yeah, probably. But I wouldn't. I would probably wait to do something in your studio, take things back and rework them, or just add a little bit of detail. But what we have here is basically the first initial recording of what we're seeing, right? So we do have we have a light source coming down. You can see like in the like this the posts in the foreground. There's a bit of shadowing happening there along those edges. Like I said, I didn't want to exceed an hour. It wouldn't have been fair to you guys working outside. Basically, I wanted to do this as a study. Now, when you guys do paint, remember, have all your paints out. We'll go over all that when we're there. You guys should have a paint list of what paints we're going to use, and and it'll basically be the paints that I use here. Everything that you're going to be using, I used in this painting, and they're very simple. I don't try to use any crazy colors that are unusual. You want to try to stick with the basic colors that that come in most sets. All right, so here, as you can see, we can see a little structure in the background. We can see the trees broke up. The sky in the back, where the mountains are, gives it a little bit of color. Can we use a little bit of that color of that cool blue in the shadows? Definitely. In fact, I did add a little bit to the shadows in the foreground, which is basically the same color that we see that was back there in those mountain areas. So there you have it. I mean, it's pretty much a response to a situation, an idea. Can you do a little bit more on it? Yeah, you can. But the thing is, it's like if you can get this done in an hour, I mean, each place we go to, we have 3 hours. You can actually turn around and find another picture all completely different than this one. And so wherever we go, consider that. Work small. I wouldn't exceed 9 by 12 in your paintings. 8 by 10 is a great size. It's easy to frame. So there you go. I'm not going to belabor the point. Work direct, work quickly. Take your photographs just before you start painting, so you will freeze the time and space that you're painting, of the situation that you're painting. And then this way, when you go to paint, when you're at home, you can revisit these paintings and add a little bit of more detail to them if you like, or just add just more color if you'd like. There's just so much more you can do in the studio, and it's not a bad thing to do that. All right, so I'm signing out. I'll see you guys in Barcelona. Okay, goodbye.